What is up, everyone? All right, welcome to my wrap up for July and August. July and August were not great reading months for me because there was some traveling and, some other stuff came up. But I did read 5 books completely and 2 partial books. And some of these were pretty big books, so it always feels good to complete a very long book. Anyway, let's go through the book. So first, I finished Best Served Cold, and I buddy read this with Joanna and did a live discussion with Joanna, and also Leslie and Christian, and their channels will all be linked along with the live show for Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. And yes, it was just a very fun live show to talk about a lot of the things that Abercrombie built in his world, and Best Served Cold is a standalone that follows after the First Law trilogy. I would recommend reading the First Law trilogy first because there are some characters in here that made brief appearances in the First Law trilogy, but I would say the main character in here is Manza, and we get into the action right away. The introduction is Manza's family being killed, and then she wants to get revenge on the 7 people involved in her family's death. And then the book's divided into 7 parts, 1 part per person Manza wants to get revenge on. And Manza wasn't great. I haven't read too many revenge stories, and certainly not recently, and I don't find it to be like the best character motivation. And yeah, that was my biggest problem, was Manza. The other characters I liked a lot more than I liked Manza. Friendly was a bit boring, but then there were some characters that were in the First Law trilogy who we see a lot more of. I like those characters a lot. And the story was pretty good, even though it was very chaotic. It kind of reminded me of Solo, the Star Wars story, except it was like better, but it was very episodic like that, in terms of like, oh, this part we're trying to kill this person in this city, and then this next part we're killing this totally different person who is involved in this different city. And this is a very grimdark book, so all our characters are dubious in one way or another, maybe not the best people to trust. So again, kind of like Solo, it leads to some pretty crazy situations in terms of people backstabbing the backstabbers, and then people who aren't planning on doing any backstabbing, but like a third person convinces them that the person's maybe going to do some backstabbing, and it's just craziness. So yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I'd give it like 4 out of 5 stars. I think I liked the second 2 books in the trilogy more than Before They Were Hanged, but I'm interested in continuing to explore Joe Abercrombie and his works and, this world. Anyway, moving along. Next, I read Priory of the Orange Tree. Oh my gosh, this book is thick. I did a full review for this on my channel, which I can link, and I also buddy read this with Casey from the End Pages. And this book follows 2 empires, the East and the West, and they're very separated from each other for various cultural and other reasons, and they have different views of the world, they have different views of dragons. And basically I summed this book up to me liking the plot in the Western Empire and not really liking the plot in the Eastern Empire, and also me thinking the first half of this book is a bit slow and not super interesting, whereas I thought the second half of the book was a lot faster, and a lot of things happen, a lot of things come together in nice, fun ways. So overall, it was like a 3-star, because half of it was good and I liked, and the other half I didn't really like. Yeah, anyway, moving along. Up next, we've got Organomics, which I buddy read with my Discord and did a live show with Charmaine, and I can link the live show. I also did a review for this because I liked this book so much. And this is a satirical book by J. Zachary Pike, and basically he follows around a dwarf, and this dwarf is a former adventurer, and there's this prophecy and a party of adventurers that are destined to save the world or something. So they kind of go on a, stereotypical D&D type of adventure, and the plot isn't anything like super innovative or anything. I mean, it's satirical, so it's kind of making fun of stereotypical plots in fantasy books. And I don't even know the best way to pitch this book, but it's kind of like an adventure book with real world exploitative elements run by like these big corporations. It's more specifically like investment corporations and financial corporations, and these corporations buy shares of adventures. So when the stereotypical adventure happens, there is loot, and that loot gets divvied up among the investors rather than the adventurers. So it's kind of funny in that way. But this leads to like a lot of interesting questions that I had early in the book, like who exactly benefits from having adventures, and does having a wing of the economy that benefits so much from having adventures create situations that make more adventures happen? And are those situations that they create to make more adventures happen, are those good or bad for society? And not only like who benefits, but how exactly they benefit. And those questions were answered phenomenally in this book. And just for like a more specific example for what I'm talking about, early on there's a goblin that we find named Gleebeck. An adventurer was tasked to kill Gleebeck and his family and other goblin associates, I guess. Now, why was that the case? And was it necessary to kill this goblin? Or would it have been more efficient maybe to talk to the goblin and try to live peacefully with the goblin? But then even when there is peace between, different races such as goblins and humans, will the rich humans use the goblins in such a way to make it so that they make more money? And yeah, I can't really say too much more than that, but from what I've said, you can probably understand why the title of this book is called Organomics. That is a great title. J. Zachary Pike did a great job, and I look forward to reading book 2, Son of a Lich. This is a bit thicker, but I will read this at some point, maybe closer to when the third book in this series comes out. This is like the best satire I've seen in fantasy. And no, I haven't really read all the fantasy satire, but I couldn't even imagine satire being done better than this. Next, Eye of the World, book 1 of Wheel of Time. I'm over halfway through it. It's okay. I feel like something might be happening soon, hopefully, so we will see, I guess. And another book that I'm not really too far through is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty, and this is kind of economics and looking at economic history, or at least that's what part 1 was, a lot of economic history and how we got to where we are today, and what exact metrics do economists look at, and what maybe don't they look at, and what maybe should they look at, or what they shouldn't look at, and why they should look at things that they aren't currently looking at. So yeah, it's definitely a lot. There's definitely a lot of detail. I don't think it's like too complicated. You can definitely get through it if you have interest in this subject, but if you don't have interest in learning about economics, this book won't like turn you into a fan of economics. And I'm going through it pretty slowly, but I will hopefully have time to finish it this month. Also, I read the Communist Manifesto, which isn't really a book. It's more of like a 30-page sort of thing. There's an audiobook for it on YouTube that's like an hour and a half, so it's interesting. But I did a live show with Christy Lewis, Pete from Ponderings of Pete, and that's on Pete's channel, so I can link that in the description. It was pretty interesting. It's 2 hours, so, a lot of words, a lot of talking, and yeah. Also, what I read was my Discord Sunday book club picks for the last 2 months, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. And these books were phenomenal. And these books were written in the late 80s or early 90s maybe, about a dystopian future, the 2020s. And these books have kind of gotten a resurgence along with Octavia Butler herself, even after her death, because of some of the, quite frankly, impressive predictions that she made for a dystopian world. Things like climate change being a massive issue and global warming. And we focus on a character in the suburbs of LA, and that is not an area that is doing great in this world because they have long droughts, very little rain, water's super expensive, and they live in their own gated community because the world outside is not good at all. And the political leaders in this book are a lot of why this book has gotten more traction and attention recently. Parable of the Talents is the second book. The leader right away in this book, who's like running for president, uses the phrase, make America great again. And yeah, Butler does a good job of looking at the stereotypical demagogue's sort of playbook for getting people to vote for him. And there absolutely are massive problems with this dystopian future. And in a lot of ways, the future that is depicted in this book is worse than the world that we are currently living in. But in a lot of ways, it's not too far off from the world that we are currently living in. And these sort of insecurities depicted in this world that regular people have are similar to our insecurities in our world, such as like, I don't know, like food insecurity maybe, or just like, or you know, like just like kitchen table issues, right? Budgeting and having enough money to live like a decent life. So yeah, I think if you like dystopian worlds, I think you'd love these two books because it shows all the bad things that can happen when demagogues and corporate power, corporate interests work together to consolidate their power and exploit everyone else. And the politicians do this by demonizing groups of people they don't like, and corporations do this by hiring people who are in situations where they have no other options other than to work for them and be in a horrible working condition, but they have to work, they have to earn money, they have to eat, their kids have to eat, so they take these jobs that are atrocious. But anyway, that's been my last 2 months. What have you guys read? And have you guys read any of these books? And what do you think of them? Let me know in the comments below. Oh yeah, Organomics 5 stars, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents also 5 stars. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys next time.